I don't want no oil a-spoiling my shoreline. I like fish much better than crud. I like birds and things a-creeping and crawling. Won't trade no more oil for blood. The sun done give us all we need to make this country run. But that black demon oil's got us fussing and fighting, and I do believe it's time we was done. I don't want them nukes run by them kooks who think radioactivity is fun. No more three-headed frogs or kids with leukemia. Nuclear power ain't fit for a dog. The sun done give us all we need to make this country run. But that nuclear power's got us fussing and fighting, and I do believe it's time we was done. No nukes!
Good morning, Toledo, and good afternoon, Columbus, and good morning, Bowling Green, and hello to everyone on the internet, wherever and whenever you are. My name is Joe DeMare, and I am here with my dog-loving co-host,
Rebecca Wood.
Yes, and Rebecca and I are going to bring you another wonderful hour of radio called For a Green Future. And For a Green Future is a show where we talk about ecology and the environment. And we talk about them in the ways that they affect you, your wealth, your health, your happiness, the wealth and health and happiness of your friends and your families and your co-workers and the bees and the wasps and the spiders and pretty much everybody and everything, because, like it or not, we are all together on this one planet called Earth.
I suspect that there are some native bees, which for some reason are like in the below my porch or in the rafters of my porch. Because they're little, they look like bees only with a big sort of a shiny bluish green patch, and they're tiny. They're like little bee flies. And I don't know what their deal is. I guess they've found crevices in the wood or something, because they're like swarming all over my porch, but they don't really seem to bother anybody.
Yeah, that's nice.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of the native bees are actually stingless, so you literally have nothing to worry about. So, well, that's cool. So, yep, we're going to have a good show for you today, as we do every week. But, of course, it gets better every time you call, and you can join us at any time during the program. 877-909-1007. That's 877-909-1007. And we're going to just chat for another 10 minutes or so here. Then we have an interview with a nice woman named Larea Sprow. And she's with the Ohio Invasive Plant Council. And they are the ones tasked with dealing with all these invasive plants that are trying to mess up Ohio's ecosystems. Then we hear from our advertisers and patrons, to whom we are eternally grateful. And then, Rebecca, what will you be talking to us about this week?
Okay, I came up with a super dramatic headline. It's Strawberry Hordes Ravage 5 Points.
Aha, okay, so strawberries.
Stay tuned.
All right, cool.
Yeah.
All right, so we got that teaser.
Yeah,
all right, that is ecological news from around the world. And as I said, hopefully at some point we get to hear from you on For a Green Future. So, yesterday I was able to take a little walk. I like to get out there in the nature and take walks and whenever possible. And I urge everyone else to do it, because we've done whole entire shows on just what health benefits of doing that are. So it got a little unusual. I was actually up in Perrysburg doing some errands, so I parked in the parking lot next to the Fort Meigs there, and walked across the bridge, walked along that trail there, the Kluwer towpath trail there in Maumee. And unfortunately, we've talked about before about how they seem to be intent on turning that park from a park into lawns. That is, chopping down the trees, putting in grass, making everything quote unquote nice. And they've continued that. They used to do that just downriver of the bridge, but now they've moved upriver, and they have, what they've basically done is they put in a road. They put in this big 20-foot wide concrete path that a semi-truck could drive down. And they've cleared out all the brush and trees and stuff to the left, between the trail and the river, and they've put grass there. And really, it's quite unpleasant because you're walking along there, the glare, the sun's beating down, and the glare off of this big white concrete pad that you're walking on makes it all hot and uncomfortable. And it's really kind of dramatic as you're walking down because they haven't cleared to the right. That's still like native vegetation and stuff. And over there's birds, and you hear bugs and insects and animals are rustling around over there. But on the left, on the riverside, it's a lawn. It's dead.
Right.
There's nothing. There's no birds flying around, no critters flying around. And it's really kind of indicative of sort of what people are trying to do now. It's kind of like they're going back to the 50s in a lot of ways. We're being forced back into the 1950s. The idea that in order for a park to be nice, it has to be completely dominated by, humans. We have to have lawns, we have to have trimmed bushes, we have to have just these flowers planted, and, heaven forbid a wildflower will get in there. And so let's hope they don't continue that. I did, after you go, about a half mile upriver, then you come to the old trail that was there before they turned it into a highway. And that's still nice. They haven't gotten rid of all the wildlife, all the nature, all the way back to the picnic grounds. But it's really kind of unpleasant on the way there. And I actually ran into this nice couple that were sitting in the wild part. They had a bench, and they were sitting in the shade of some trees, and said hello to them. And I was like, isn't this part much nicer than it is over there and they were like, yes. They were in complete agreement with me. And in fact, the route back, what I did was I went up to the towpath trail, which is, runs parallel to the river, but just farther north. And that's how I went back. And there were about 5 times as many people on the towpath trail, because that's still all natural and nice. The canopy of the trees meets over the top of the trail.
Because it's a swamp on either side. You can't really mow it.
Right.
You could fill in the swamp, but apparently nobody has had that idea yet.
Let's hope they don't think of that.
Yeah, really don't.
So, but people were loving that trail. So when they're given the choice between the quote unquote nice cement road to walk on or this towpath trail through the woods, people were choosing the towpath trail.
I think whoever designed that has really literally never been outside of the air conditioning. Well, yeah. They would realize that it's hot. It's hot right now. It's hot.
And I mean, that is part of the problem. Is these people are designing these things sitting in front of computer screens,
right.
And drawing little lines on maps and things, and not realizing, like you say, it's hot.
There's weather out there.
There's weather, and it sounds much nicer. The towpath trail, there were birds and there were critters. I saw birds, rabbits, squirrels, chipmunks, and actually there were more bugs, which some people might get upset about, but you don't get the birds if you don't have the bugs.
True.
And so, so let's just hope they're done. It's
like, okay, skeeter bites or heat stroke. Take your pick.
Yeah, I'll take the mosquito bites, right?
Yeah.
But one interesting thing I did notice while I was walking along the river part there were a bunch of flat-bottom boats, and there were 4 of them, and they all seemed to be together, and they were doing this ballet dance around in the waters all around the pillars of that old bridge that have that's where the bridge is gone. No, well, it may have been a railroad bridge, but it's the bridge that broke down decades ago, and there's just the pillars sticking up out of the water. Oh, we have a caller. Yes, caller, go ahead.
Hello.
Hi.
Morning.
Hi. So you're talking about trees being cut down, and I had to call in because I've been noticing this. I guess it's a trend. People cutting down perfectly fine, healthy shade trees. I guess because they want more sun in their windows or whatever. But I mean, it really hurts my heart to see this because trees are so. I mean, at my house, I have two big maple trees and an oak tree, and and my house stays cool and it's protected and all that. And I think that maybe I don't know if they're afraid of branches falling on their tree. I don't know what it is, but it's really ridiculous because these houses are. You drive around my area, and all you see are these holes where they're taking these stumps out, and there's nothing but lawn, and it's so. It's silly. I don't know.
Boring.
I really don't know what the motivation is. Every time I see one, I want to go up and ask, "Why are you doing this?" But I try to stay in my own lane. So I don't know if you notice that or not.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And people don't realize they could literally save hundreds of dollars a year on their energy bills just by having one tree shading their house. And of course,
true that. And I also like there's a one oak tree. I have a friend who is retired park ranger, and she told me a statistic. I don't remember what it is, but how many insects are home for like one oak tree? It's remarkable, and the variety and all that. I mean, and we're having an insect collapse, right?
yeah,
Because of everything that's going on, and if we lose the insects, we're lost. We're gone. We're done because they're the foundation for all this.
right.
So
Yeah, if you like the birds, you got to have the
wanted
bugs.
to mention that.
Yeah. All right. Well, thanks so much for calling in, and I couldn't agree more. I have been noticing the same thing, that there seems to be some kind of fad of cutting down perfectly good big trees, just because people don't want them, I guess. But I had a big old maple in my yard that died, and it broke my heart to have to cut it down. But we should all be planting more big trees because we're going to need them basically as it gets hotter and hotter. We need that shade. We need that carbon pulled out of the air. So thanks for bringing that up. So moving on, just really quick, wanted to mention that I was watching these boats swimming, or going around in the river there, upstream and downstream, going back and forth. And they looked like ballet dancers, as I said. And I noticed that they had in the front of the boat, they had these little contraptions where they were dangling bare wires into the water. And I realized, okay, these are they're electrifying, they're catching fish by electrifying them.
Is that legal?
Well, in this case it is,
Okay.
because as I was walking back to my car, I noticed one of the boats pulling up on the shore at right next to the parking lot where my van was, so my Wonder Van. So I ran down and I was talking to them a little bit, and what it is it's the state, and what they were doing was electrifying the water and catching the invasive grass carp.
Oh boy.
Yeah, and then letting all the other fish go. Not.
Oh, so it just stuns them then.
Yeah, it just
Okay,
stuns them
interesting.
for a very short time, and so they had caught a bunch of grass carp, but they also had seen a whole bunch of other fish, like native fish and things. So we still have some biodiversity there, but the grass carp are definitely here, and it was just a really interesting thing to see and watch, and maybe we'll try to get the people who do that program on in a future show. But for this show, we have somebody dealing with the invasive plants as opposed to invasive fish, and that is Ms. Larea Sprow. And so let's go ahead and hear that interview right now. Could you please tell us your name and who you're with?
Yeah, hi, my name is Larea Sprow, and I am here today representing the Ohio Invasive Plant Council. The Ohio Invasive Plant Council is basically, it's a coalition of different agencies, organizations, individuals that are interested in invasive plants specifically and how those invasives can impact our natural areas.
I see. Okay. Well, thanks for coming on.
Yeah, thank you,
And
Joe.
The first time I heard of the Ohio Invasive Plant Council was at a Soil and Water Conservation District meeting where I told them about a patch of invasive bamboo that I saw that had kind of gotten going.
Mm-hmm.
And they immediately said, well, talk to you guys. So, so what exactly does the OIPC do? And yeah, how do you do it?
Yeah, so OIPC, let's see, we've been around as a official nonprofit organization since about, I believe about 2005. So there were groups of people starting to get together prior to that, more like the early 2000s, late 90s. And then created enough momentum and understanding that there really was a need for a more cohesive organization in the state of Ohio, just so that people could educate. So one of OIPC's primary goals is really to educate the public about invasive plants and do workshops. So we like to do workshops, presentations. We have a annual meeting every year, and in the annual meeting, part of that are different presentations of different research that might be going on in the area. And then every 3 years, we do an actual research conference every 3 years. And then one of the other things that OIPC does is we have created a protocol for assessing plants for basically their invasiveness. So a scientific-based protocol that we can use, and we can put plants through that protocol to get a score so that we can understand, have a better understanding of, is this plant actually invasive or not? And also that gives us the ability to educate not only individuals and the public, but also maybe to be able to have some say in legislative type things that might, so that we have scientific based information about whether or not something is actually invasive.
Okay. So how serious a threat to Ohio's ecosystems are invasive plants?
So there are basically, let's see, I'm trying to think of what kinds of threats things. So for natural areas, one of the number one threats to a natural area is just the actual loss of that natural area, right? So whether it be to agriculture or to building, so the complete loss is one of the number one threats. And then one of the other number one threats is actual invasive plants. So what the invasive plants are doing is you're losing the habitat, but not to loss of space of, as far as like building or something, but those plants are just taking over so the natural habitat can no longer thrive. So it's would be considered about probably the second critical thing that is impacting our natural areas are invasive plants and invasive species in general.
So most of us remember the emerald ash borer that came through and wiped out the ash trees in Ohio. And a few weeks ago, we actually did a story on an invasive nematode that's wiping out beech trees. What are some of the other invasive species that we're facing, and what, in your opinion, is the most dangerous invasive that people don't know about, that we're not talking about?
Oh gosh, that's a good one. Invasive plants threaten different things. So, you have invasive plants that are invasive to aquatic areas or invasive to upland areas. So I think in a lot of ways, our aquatic invasives are probably the most damaging because they can also impact the quality of our water. So I think it is really important for us to be paying attention to our aquatic invasives. And they're also in a lot of ways the hardest to control or keep in place because water is all connected. Water is connected. And so it's hard once something gets into a water system, it's really difficult to keep it in place. Some of the invasives, with climate change, we are starting to look really hard at what our new invasives are, because for so long, a southern invasive in the southern states might have been staying in those southern states, so they were staying within a certain range. But now with climate change, there are a lot of invasives that have been in the United States for a long time, but have never maybe been a threat in Ohio. So we're really starting to watch those invasives and try to determine which ones are the biggest threats. So there's some trees like the princess tree, which is invasive in southern Ohio and is moving its way up, and a lot of other species that typically weren't necessarily this far range, but with climate change, the story is definitely changing.
Huh. And so, just an example of an aquatic invasive.
So our aquatic invasives, like the zebra mussel, which is, I guess, not a plant, but obviously Phragmites is one of the big ones. Reed canary grass. So those are some of the things that can really take over.
So what could people do to help protect Ohio's native species? The OIPC's website has a lot of pictures of people clearing out invasives, and how effective can that strategy be?
Yeah, so I think we have a lot of individual success stories, and OIPC is always interested in people's individual success stories because they give us all something to be inspired about, right? So even if you have a small postage stamp yard, like my yard in Bowling Green, I have invasive plants in my yard in Bowling Green, but there are things that we can do even on our small properties to combat invasives. It's hard to have a success story of an invasive plant. Once something becomes invasive, it means that it's already been here for long enough that it started to invade. And so it's hard to have the success story of, this invasive was here and now it's completely gone from an area, meaning, from North America or from Ohio. However, we have a lot of success stories on individual, properties or in park districts, or where an area that was invaded is now high quality natural areas again. So the best things that we can do is in our high quality natural areas to really be watching them and volunteering in those areas to keep the invasives out if they're not there yet. But we have a lot of success stories where people have helped to remove invasives, and the natives were able to come back and thrive.
Can you point to any invasives that have sort of been knocked back? I remember purple loosestrife used to be a huge problem like 20 years ago.
Yeah.
I'm not seeing as much of that.
Yeah, so purple loosestrife, so some invasives, we can actually release things that create natural controls. So you could release like an insect, which is what happened with purple loosestrife, so that it's not just us humans, trying to create that control, but we have something in nature that's actually helping us too. So that is one of the success stories with purple loosestrife. Now that, again, is something you have to be careful about because you're releasing a non-native species to help protect, to combat an invasive, which that story has gone wrong many times too. But we're much more diligent now in science before releasing another non-native to combat an invasive. So purple loosestrife is definitely one of the success stories as far as, it's still an incredibly invasive plant, but we do have something that can combat it in nature now.
So how could people find out which species are invasive and which are native?
So on Ohio Invasive Plant Council website, we have a list of species that we've run through our invasive assessment protocol. So the big top invasives are definitely on our website, and you can go there and see how those rank. So how different non-native plants rank, and as far as their invasiveness, and that's a pretty long list. I think we've run about 80 plants, 80 different species, through the protocol, and about 45 of them, I want to say, I can't remember exactly, rank as what we would consider invasive. But there are a lot of other websites that people can go to find other invasive plants.
But the next question is, so trying to control the invasives is important, but how about how important is it to encourage the natives?
Yeah. So one of the things that we really encourage is for people to, plant native plants in their landscaping. We can't stress enough how even these little, a small yard is important to native plants or native animals and insects. And one of them, the things that I like to talk about in just our small yard that we have in Bowling Green, there are times when my kids and I will take like a walk through our back alley at nighttime when you can hear insects and things are loud. And you can tell, even though you can't see people's backyards, just by the sound, you can tell whose backyard has natural and native vegetation and whose yard is primarily just grass, because you'll hear a lot of insects and then all of a sudden you'll hear nothing, and then you'll hear insects and then you'll hear nothing. So you can tell just by that, like which yards are supporting wildlife and which ones are not. So even in small yards in urban settings, we can support wildlife. And the best way for us to do that is to plant a wide variety of native plants. Because that's what native species need, native vegetation. And there's some native species that only, that need very specific native vegetation. So it's important for us to help provide that.
Okay. Does the OIPC have enough resources to do the job? Do you guys have enough funding or volunteers?
We always need more funding and we always need more volunteers. But I think OIPC, one of our major, really we're trying to just bring people together. So we have a lot, of local parks, so local metro parks, local city parks, the state parks, ONAPA, so Ohio Natural Areas and Preserves Association. We have a lot of different organizations through the state that are preserving natural areas and protecting natural areas and asking for volunteers for help doing that. So what we really want to do is to pull those things together and help provide some cohesiveness to all of that. So that's one of our primary goals. We do also have a small grant program to support research. Currently, we have an opening for an AmeriCorps position to help us with our website and just some outreach. That is difficult. We run on it's a 12-person board of directors, but it's a volunteer position, and everyone's busy. So we do have a small position that is paid, currently available through AmeriCorps, so we're excited about that.
Oh, okay. So if somebody's looking for a summer job, maybe
yeah,
you should
exactly.
check out your website.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because we don't have dues, so most of our income is through donations or our annual our conference and things like that.
Okay. Well, how could so is there anything you'd like to add?
I just really want to, I think the biggest thing is really just encouraging people to talk about invasive plants. One of the things that I think is so important is not only talking about invasive plants with neighbors, but talking about the celebrations of, what you're seeing when you have your native plants. I think that's probably more important because people get excited about that. So if you can get your neighbors excited about the wildlife that is visiting your property because of the natives, then they're going to want that also, right? And so then they're going to be asking, and then you can share, what natives you have and where you can get those natives, which is somewhat difficult. We do have a brochure that we've developed that has a list of invasive plants and then the alternatives that you could plant. Like if you like the way that invasive plant looks, here's an alternative native plant that would give you something similar as far as look or form, but it would be a native version. And we've developed that with the landscape industry. So they're not, some of them are cultivars, but they're safe cultivars to plant.
Okay. And that website and how people can follow what OIPC is doing?
So we have our website, and then we also do have a Google group. So if people are interested in just kind of conversations about invasive plants, or sometimes we'll share also conversations about native plants too. So if people are interested in our Google groups, basically if you get on our website, and you can contact us through that to let us know how you're interested in being involved. We're also always looking for content as far as people that might want to write articles for our newsletter, which comes out quarterly. So if anyone has anything they want to share about invasives or success stories that they have had on their property, or maybe a park district that they're working for, we're really interested in those stories too.
All right. Well, thank you very much.
Thank you.
And thank you folks for listening. We're back live and you can join us anytime, 877-909-1007. And now it's time to hear from those who make this show possible, our advertisers.
For a Green Future is also brought to you by the Wood County Park District. The Wood County Park District is a natural resources conservation agency. They protect natural spaces, maintain quality green spaces, provide engaging programming, and they teach people to love and respect nature. They also restore wildlife habitats and lead people on outdoor adventures. Wood County Parks protects natural spaces in Wood County for all to enjoy from 8 a.m. to 30 minutes past sunset every day of the year. There are several ways to get a hold of them and find out what's happening. One is to call them at 419-353-1897. Another is to visit their website, www.wcparks.org. The website again is www.wcparks.org. They are also available on all social media, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, and many others. Just search for WC Parks. That's the Wood County Park District, and we're very grateful for their support.
And we are also very grateful for the support of our patrons. These are wonderful people who've gone to patreon.com. That's Patreon. There they searched for a Green Future. Up popped our Patreon page, and they went down through the different membership levels, chose a membership level that matched their own budget, and signed up for a monthly donation. And every week a little bit comes out of their account, comes over to us, and that's how we can keep bringing this fantastic show to you every week. So please consider becoming a patron. All right, Rebecca, now let's talk about something sweet here.
Okie dokie. Well, they may not be that sweet, but they're sort of tangy anyway. Yeah, last year and this summer both, I noticed in my new neighborhood of West Toledo, sort of near West Toledo, generally, there are things on the ground that as you walk around that look very, very much like tiny little strawberries, and which I feel strongly, along with the violets, are clear evidence of the existence of fairies. However, for those of you, for the cynical amongst us, let's talk a little bit about what science thinks about the tiny strawberries. So yeah, there's been some debate in the neighborhood, like all over 5 Points and down into Colony, I believe, that about whether or not they are real wild strawberries or mock strawberries, or what are they. So it turns out, yeah, there are several explanations for tiny itsy bitsy little strawberries. First of all, they could be feral strawberries, which the entire deal with strawberries apparently is that they are in the genus Fragaria, in the Rosaceae family, the rose family, basically. They started in the 1700s. People started bringing in European woodland strawberries, Fragaria vesca, I believe, and actually cultivating them to be big and sweet and have a lot of meat and not so many seeds. And then in the late 1700s, after people discovered America, they found out it was even better if they had a hybrid strawberry that's a combination of a Chilean species and the North American woodland strawberry. So that would be Fragaria virginiana plus Fragaria chilioensis, I believe. So yeah, that is the most common strawberry that you're used to dealing with. So I mean, it could be a hybrid that has escaped and gone feral. Or it could actually be it could, what's an American kind again in North America? Oh, it could be a Virginiana that's still out there, for no particular reason. But yeah, so a hybrid species being the breeding of two varieties, species or genre. So in this case, I guess species. But yeah, so we brought them over here because they taste good, yada yada yada. I believe the Chilean variety is also used as medicine. People use it as medicine, and so yeah, that's where we got garden strawberries. The woodland variety is also edible, although it doesn't, it's not that sweet, and it's kind of grainy. It's kind of all seeds, basically. There's also something called a mock strawberry, which is it's also in the rose family, but it's a Potentia indica, which has, and you can tell them from the other ones because it has yellow flowers as opposed to the conventional white or pale pink flowers. So big clue. Potentia is native to the eastern and southern Asia. Medicinal and ornamental purposes. Okay, that's the one that has medicinal and ornamental purposes. And it's considered to be invasive in some areas of the U.S., so it could even be that. Although, I don't know how well they do, But then climate change, so it's getting warmer. And Chile is not all a warm place. Chile has mountains and deserts where it gets very, very cold. So you don't know. Anyway, whatever they are, I'm gonna have to look at the flowers more carefully, I guess. But you can eat all three of them, including the mock. It turns out. I don't. How much you enjoy this might vary. But yeah, as far as I know, you check with your local botanist or herbalist, but there's nothing out there looking like a strawberry, which is deadly poison. So.
Well, that's reassuring.
Yeah. So some environmental problems that they have is that strawberry crops are very sensitive to changes in temperature, rainfall, and sunlight. And yeah, this past decade has been all about changes in temperature, rainfall, and sunlight. So life might be hard for strawberry farmers these days. They're having more strawberry kill days in Florida, they call them, where the temperature is just too hot for strawberries to survive. And it's not like with oranges during a cold snap where you can go out and light smudge fires in your grove or whatever. It's not much. You can't really air condition the strawberry fields very well.
No.
I don't know, maybe ice. You could dump ice on them. I don't know. But yeah, they and some environmental problems that they cause, it's that they have high irrigation requirements. So they use up a lot of water. They require excessive pesticides and fertilizers to get those nice big plump ones and not be tiny and grainy. And also forest lands are being destroyed to grow this and other monocultures, basically. It's probably not just strawberries. Also, they use plastic packaging and have a pretty high carbon footprint.
Interesting.
Even for a normal vegetable, I believe, so.
Okay. Well, I do know the way to tell the difference between the mock and the other.
Okay.
The mock strawberries, they stick up.
Okay.
So it's, they're like cone shaped, so the pointy part of the cone is pointing upwards. And then the other strawberries, the strawberry droops down from the top.
Okay, that makes sense.
But they're all edible, so you can't go wrong. All right, well, thank you, Rebecca.
You're welcome.
Okay, well, now it's time for ecological news, and we have a fair bit to go through. So our first story is in keeping with our invasives theme for this week, and this is a story. It's a Knowable magazine, May 23rd, and the title is "The Hornet Has Landed. Scientists Combat New Honeybee Killer in U.S." And what it is a yellow-legged hornet has come over, and it was discovered in August of 2023 in Savannah. And yellow-legged hornets, they're bigger than yellow jackets. They're originally from Afghanistan, China, and that area of Asia and Indonesia. And they're very, very aggressive in terms of eating bees of all kinds.
That's what we need.
Portugal, in fact, has already lost 35% of its honey production to these yellow-legged hornets. They're a big problem in Europe. In France, 30 to 80% of the local bee colonies have been eaten by these yellow-legged hornets. Each hornet eats or can kill dozens of bees per day, and each nest can have about 6,000 wasps living in it. And there's over 100 crops that need bees. So as long as if these things get established, we could be in big trouble. One reason they're so effective is that they're a highly social wasp. They're divided up into workers and bees that do reproduction and bees that forage and bees that take care of the baby.
Teamwork makes the bees die off.
Yeah,
I guess.
Yellow-legged hornets, right?
I don't know whose dream that is exactly.
And it turns out these hornets of various kinds, including like yellow jackets, are very invasive all over the world. Hawaii especially is apparently getting decimated by yellow jackets. And so these yellow-legged hornets are haplodiploid, which was a new one for me. I hadn't heard that phrase before. Haplodiploid. So
something about okay, I'm gonna guess it's something about the reproduction, right?
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
If one of them has 2 copies of chromosomes, like humans do, then they become a female yellow-legged hornet. But if they only have one set of chromosomes, then they're males. So I guess females are a little more complicated than males, I guess.
There you go.
So anyway, the reason this is important right now is that so far they are only in Savannah, Georgia. And we may still be able to stop them. Right now, the technique they're using, the strategy they're using is they're just waiting till people spot them, and then they follow them back to their nests, and then they destroy the nests.
They have both voodoo and drag queens down there. They team up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right, the drag queens versus the hornet queens.
There we are.
That'd be interesting. So they've killed 21 queens so far in Savannah. The thing is that this piecemeal approach, I don't think is going to work. And I've said this before on the show, is that when you first have this invasion, when you have a very limited geographic area, you know right where they are, bomb everything.
Yeah.
Just spray the heck out of the whole neighborhood. And hopefully that'll do it. And also, again, this is yet another invasive species that probably came over on a shipment from China that really the economic damage that they're going to do if they manage to wipe out our honeybee population is many, many, many times more than whatever tiny little profit got made with that shipment of whatever that came over. So what we need to do is have inspection of literally every shipping container that comes over to search for these invasives before they get going. So, but that's it for that story. So let's cheer on the scientists down in Savannah and hope, because this really is the critical summer, because if they can manage to contain them this summer, we'll be okay for a while. But if they get beyond them, if next year it looks like, oh, we've killed 50, then it'll be too late. Next story, and this one is rather depressing. Nuclear Joe Biden goes critical.
No, not again.
Yeah. The White House on Friday released a fact sheet with the title, Biden-Harris administration announces new steps to bolster domestic nuclear industry and advance America's clean energy future. And the thing is, it's one or the other. Either you bolster the domestic nuclear industry or you have a clean energy future.
Yeah.
The two goals are, contradictory. He's created something called the Nuclear Power Plant Management and Delivery Working Group, which is a bunch of people in suits that want to basically cover the country in nuclear power plants. He's also forcing the Army to buy nuclear reactors, small nuclear reactors, which, strategically is the stupidest possible move you could do militarily, because if you have a base, right, and it gets hit by a missile from an enemy, you could rebuild the base, you could rebuild the airstrip or whatever that gets destroyed. But if you have a nuclear plant on your base,
nothing can live there for a few million years.
yeah, and it gets hit by a missile, you have
there goes your base.
permanently lost the base, no matter how strategically placed it was. So this is what happens when politics starts affecting military readiness.
Great.
And in support of that, just a few days ago, Secretary of Energy Granholm, who used to be the governor of Michigan, she gave a speech. She went to the Vogtle nuclear power plants, which we've talked about before, and they just had the ribbon cutting for them. And the Vogtle nuclear plants are arguably the greatest economic failure in human history, because they were 7 years late and they were $22 billion over budget. They were supposed to cost $14 billion. They ended up costing $36 billion. And it's going to saddle Georgia ratepayers with increased bills for 50 years, giving Georgia one of the highest electric rates in the nation. And interestingly, while they were working on these nukes, Georgia actually added 4.5 gigawatts of solar for 1/5 the cost. So the nuke plants together add up to about 2.2 gigawatts. Georgia added 4.5 gigawatts of solar in that same period of time, with, you know, just a fraction of a time for each project. And so basically what she did was she stood in front of one of the greatest economic failures in history, the most expensive power plant ever built by humans, and said, we need another 200 of these.
No, we don't.
No, we can't. And, you know, the small modular reactors, there was actually, just on May 29th, the Institute for Energy Economics and Financial Analysis released a new report. Small modular reactors still too expensive, too slow, too risky. And so one of the things they point out here is that investment in nukes lowers the investment in wind, solar, and storage, and construction and the costs are just through the roof. And the whole point of it is, the whole thing to take away from this is, we have a solution. We can go 100% carbon free with wind and solar and storage. The technology has finally arrived. The wind turbines are big enough, the solar panels are efficient enough, the batteries have gotten cheap enough, and yet Nuclear Joe did 180 and is basically trying to take us back to the 1950s, when nuclear was the power of the future. And we don't have that decade to waste, so boo on him for that. And he's actually pulling a lot of the Democratic Party along with him. LA Times story on May 30th titled, "If Gavin Newsom is a climate champion, why did he just crush community solar?" And essentially the Public Service Commission that Gavin Newsom personally appointed, they just shot down community solar. They put in regulations that make it pretty much impossible to install. And this follows their slashing of incentives for rooftop solar, which have caused new rooftop solar installations to crash by about 90%, and taken California off their track for getting to be climate neutral, or, you know, to be carbon-free energy. And the reason is, the fundamental reason is that he has thrown in with Biden on nuclear. And if you love nukes, you have to hate renewables, because renewables can do the job. Renewables all over the world are replacing coal and oil and nuclear. And if you want to have nukes, you have to stop the renewables, because they're just, you know, they're too clean, they're too cheap, they go up too fast. Nukes can't compete. So some really bad news there. Okay, next story. And I think I want to go to something a little more positive, a little more upbeat here. And this is a story in a paper called The Virginian Pilot, which was actually, it's a kind of an old story back on October of 21. But it's worth going over, and that is that Virginia's first offshore wind turbines have become a haven for wildlife. And the situation is that Dominion Energy wants to build 180 offshore turbines, pretty far offshore, about a 2-hour boat ride offshore. They're still working on all the approvals, all the permitting and so forth, but they were able to put up 2 of these 600-foot tall turbines as to sort of show that it can be done and to get all the wiring in place and so forth. And they've been studying the results of building these things, and essentially they're acting like artificial reefs. And so the bases of them have been colonized by mussels and algae, and then those have brought in fish like sea bass and mahi and bait fish. Mollusks are the first to colonize, the mussels and animals like that. And then those bring in things that eat the mussels like crabs, and things that eat the crabs like fish. And this mirrors the European experience, where they've got tons of offshore wind. And what they found is that they've created entire ecosystems that go all the way from the mussels all the way up to the big mammals like seals and dolphins that can survive in these ocean environments, because now you've created that base, that platform that life needs to live on in the open ocean. And so it's just a reminder that when you start doing the right thing, when you do the really clean energy like offshore wind, other things kind of fall into place. And just as you can have positive feedback loops that take you in a negative direction, as with carbon dioxide emissions, you can create positive feedback loops that are actually positive, that actually make the world a better place and bring more things around and so forth. And so so that was a little bit of good news I wanted to end with. And I wanted to also mention that next week's show, we have gotten an incredible interview that I worked months to get, actually. I've talked about it, I've mentioned it before on the show, but Greenpeace is being hit by a $300 million lawsuit. It's called a SLAP lawsuit, which stands for Strategic Liability Against Public Participation, which is basically just a way of weaponizing the courts and trying to eliminate environmental groups like Greenpeace. And so I actually have one of the lawyers that's working on that case, and I've got a nice interview with her already, all recorded, and that's what we'll be listening to last week. All right, well, we still have a couple minutes left, and so I thought I would just mention something. This past week, I have a friend who needed to buy a new car, and I actually drove him in the Wonder Van all the way to Indianapolis, because he found this car out there, a Honda Element, and he found a fantastic deal on a low mileage car, and it was like thousands of dollars less than anything he could find around here. So it was worth it to take a drive all the way out to Indianapolis. But I was, of course, very disappointed, because, this is a friend of mine, and I would hope that my friends, at least, would be buying electric cars, because we are really at a point now where it's not really a choice anymore. If we really want to get rid of the carbon emissions, we have to switch to electric cars and increase and improve mass transit. And so I did it for him because, he's a friend and it was important to him. But over the lifetime of that car, had he bought electric, because when you're running on electric, you're getting the equivalent of gas at $1.25 a gallon, and you don't have lots of the expenses you do with a gas car. Like, you don't need to replace your brake pads, you don't need oil changes, you don't have to worry about your exhaust falling off, rusting out and falling off, because there is no exhaust. Had he been able to spend that little bit more at the beginning, he would have saved many more thousands than we saved him by driving to Indianapolis. And that's something to remember, is that this is part of the green future. In a green future, it's cheaper to drive around. Your car is more comfortable, and your car, you don't have to breathe in exhaust. The green future is better. And there's an opportunity right now for you to join in this, and that is that the Ford Lightning, basically the electric pickup truck made by Ford. If you're someone who leases cars right now, the lease price for the Ford Lightning is $200 a month less than it is for the exact same gas version of the pickup truck. And part of the reason for this is that there's been a huge release of trolls onto the internet that essentially knock electric cars at every kind of internet post or every social media post. These trolls show up and talk about how terrible electric cars are, when actually they're wonderful. They have better pickup, they need less maintenance, they go faster. And so if you're somebody who's right now looking to lease a car, the Ford Lightning leases for $200 cheaper per month. And one cool thing about the Ford Lightning is that if the power goes out at your house, this pickup truck will run your house. And Ford has actually estimated that on a full charge, one of these F-150 Lightnings can power the average American house for about a week. So if that happens just once and it prevents your sump pump from flooding your basement, or it saves all the food in your freezer, or it prevents everybody in your house from dying because you don't have air conditioning, then it's paid for itself, right? So save some money, get a cool car, and if you're someone looking to lease something right now, think about a Ford Lightning. And I have to say, Ford did not pay me to do this, although, gosh darn it, they should be. All right, well, that's about it for this week. Thanks so much for listening. Go out, get an electric car, put some solar panels on your house, be an alpha, and lead the way to a green future. All right, Rebecca, that's it. This is Joe DeMare.
And Rebecca Wood.
And we are signing off.
I don't want no oil, a spoil in my shoreline. I like fish much better than crud. I like birds and things, creeping and crawling. Won't trade no more oil for blood. The sun done give us all we need to make this country run. But that black demon oil's got us fussing and fighting, and I do believe it's time we was done. I don't want them nukes run by them kooks who think radioactivity is fun. No more three-headed frogs or kids with leukemia. Nuclear power ain't fit for a dog. The sun done give us all we need to make this country run. But that nuclear power's got us fussing and fighting, and I do believe it's time we was done. No nukes!